Welcome to the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast, where we take a metabolic approach to help guide you on preventing, prevailing, and striving over cancer.
We are live. We are live on the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast. My incredible co-host, Keith Bishop. I'm Jeff Lopes. Last week, we talked about vitamin D. It was such an informative podcast. This week, this is a topic that Keith talks about quite a bit on his social media posts, and he brought it up that he wanted to discuss it on our podcast. It is overcooking of food. We're on episode 22, which is amazing. The 25 is just around the corner. But overcooking of food, and this is something where a lot of people, and we're gonna talk about all foods, but if you go on social media and you look at the culture of certain states, Texas, and it's all about that burn on the meat, and it's all about that sear, and you see all these. It's like every big chef is always about get that sear on that meat, get that blackened on that meat, like. And as a colorectal cancer survivor, that just scares the shit out of me. I'm like having my meat as pink as possible on the grill. I try not to put an open flame. I try to keep the flame as low as possible. I'm keep churning and keep moving around. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. We're going to talk about the meat. We're going to talk about the carcinogenic effects on it, but also I want to talk about other foods because that's something you wanted to talk about. So let's break it down. Overcooking. Let's start with the meats. Overcooking on meats and temperature we should be cooking on, and what should we be looking at, and why should we be concerned about overcooking meats?
Well, what happens is that heat, that flame, when it starts browning the meat, those amino acids, and there's actually a few sugars in meat also, but those amino acids and sugars they're changed physically. So in my background of pharmacy and chemistry, we use heat to make things and change things. So, you can, if you want to purify metal, smelt metal, you apply heat to it and it separates things out. And physically, if you separate that, now you have a new product. Well, same thing with heat. So if we overcook something and it starts turning colors, now we're starting to change that aspect of that food. So like meat, when it's starting to turn brown, those particles are heterocyclic amines, and those chemicals are, the higher the quantity of them, the more of them, it increases the risk of cancers. And so those are damaged chemicals. And then something, so that's just like, and same thing as breathing smoke is the same thing. So that's a bad chemical. Firemen, that before they started using a lot of respirators, but even still, they still are exposed to a lot of chemicals, but they garb up now because they know that those older firefighters got all kinds of cancers because they were breathing in that smoke. But and then some of us have more of an issue with that. I do have it's called a SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism genetically, where I have a difficult time detoxing those charred or those browned chemicals from meats and other things. So even smoke. So when I'm out grilling, like what you're talking about, we fixed a steak the other night, and I keep that temperature at below 350, so kind of between 300 350 degrees. I adjust all those burners, and I'm just cooking 2 steaks, 2 T-bones here, and but I'm using those other burners off to the side to help create more of an oven type effect to gently cook that, and then turn it, but it's like 10 minutes at 300, less than 350 Fahrenheit, which would be 77 Celsius. So that anything above that, we start seeing definite charring, of meat, and that those chemicals are toxic chemicals that our body has to get rid of, and some of us have more problems than that. So they can alter the DNA in cells, and so those are totally different chemicals. That's not meat, that charred. Although some people have developed a taste for it and think that that's the best thing in the world, but it is not. And so those are nasty chemicals.
I'm going to talk about two things there. So the first thing I want to ask you is, you see, I've read so many studies, Keith, and I was the biggest meat eater. I love meat. There's nothing more enjoyable to me than eating a medium rare steak. And when I found out I had colorectal cancer, all of a sudden you start hearing, we start reading, you start listening to podcasts, and everybody's like, red meat associated with colorectal cancer, red meat. And then you start looking at other studies, and these studies that show red meat associated with colorectal cancer, it's not actually red meat. They associate and they bundle processed meats with these red meats.
So that's correct, right?
Yeah. So when you're looking at the cooking aspect of it, now you see a lot of these grill masters, they put on their barbecue sauce or marinade and stuff like that.
Right.
When they're brushing this on, and that is based with sugar, which is not good for cancer anyhow. That's what's getting the quicker char. But the meat inside is usually pink. Is that still doing the bad effect by the outside char?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
and from a different set of chemicals.
Okay.
Yes. And so those other chemicals are more than likely probably more what we call let's see here, acrylamides.
Okay.
And which, in the science is not real strong on this, but definitely acrylamides are formed whenever carbohydrates are browned.
Yes.
So like the crust on bread, the outside part of bread, that browning, or pizza crust, that edge, the more brown and darker it turns, the greater the concern. And so any carbohydrate that's cooked at high temperature, same type of thing about high temps, it is going to have more and more and more acrylamides. And so there's some issues also on that. It's, all of these things aren't like it's going to, I will eat some of those things occasionally, but, we need to be careful about even vegetables and fruit. So we start charring those and turning those brown. Those are acrylamides, and those are associated with increased risks of cancer. And it's not like just fantastic. You can do it occasionally, but on a regular basis, it may be a problem. And it could be there's other nutrients in that.
Okay. So when you're talking about associated with cancers, let's just break this down for people. So we char a piece of meat, we intake it. It's obviously going through the digestive tract, going through the colon. That is why it's obviously associated more with the colorectal cancers and
yes,
or interior organs and stuff like that. Those forms of cancers, correct?
Overwhelming the system with those charred chemicals. And so we can take a little bit of a hit of a toxic chemical and probably do okay. But, day in and day out, frequent, there's just too many. And these chemicals, these heterocyclic amines they are damaging chemicals. They will, physically damage your body.
In which way? Break the damage down. Is it breaking down? Is damaging cells? Like explain
cells. Damages the cells and alters the mitochondria inside the cells as to how they're doing on that. So I'm sorry if you can hear that phone. I forgot to turn it off.
No, all good. No, it's all good. So give me more of a breakdown. So we talked about in our last episode how vitamin D attaches to cells, makes it stronger, helps things. So how does it attach to a cell? Like, give me an understanding of how it works with your cells.
Well, so our cells are just absorbing all these nutrients that are in the system and absorbing those nutrients, and it's just going to expose it. And so once again, if we can't detox that and get rid of it, so now those chemicals are just floating around. It's going to go into the brain and every organ and throughout the body, and it may be even a greater concern for colon and rectal cancer, because it's actually in that tube, and this a major dose of it, in there. And so a similar type thing happens with the preserved meat. Since you mentioned that, it's going to be the nitrates, and actually plant nitrates. That one trick that the manufacturers are doing now, they're adding plant nitrates to preserved meats so that it's naturally preserved, but the same thing happens if you overcook that sausage or that bacon with the plant nitrates. Now you've made nitrosamines,
which is actually which is even worse.
Exactly. So the nitrates aren't the problem. It's when you cook it is the problem. So when that heat physically changes into another chemical, and then that chemical is going around and it's going to damage the DNA, type of a thing is one option. And once that damaged DNA, then now the cell, when it reproduces, it's passing on that damage. And then that's the kind of cancer,
the growth, and eventually turns into a tumor.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's talk about, I want to talk about different ways or methods to cook to eliminate that. We'll talk about that, but let's not get into that yet. So we talked about meats. You talked a little bit about vegetables. Are we looking at the whole scope of anything you cook? You don't want to overcook it. That's something.
Yes.
Because when I was reading little articles on the net and stuff, they said there's not much studies towards overcooking a vegetable yet or something like that. There's not many studies.
Right.
The more the studies are towards the red meats and stuff like that, and just, I guess, animal products. So you're looking at the whole scope of everything we do. We want to, and let's go back to that quickly. I eat a lot of raw vegetables. Like my lunch today is a raw green pepper. Like I have a lot of raw vegetables. I eat raw broccoli. I eat a lot of raw vegetables as long as they're washed properly. So you're going to get a lot more nutrients out of most raw vegetables or raw fruits. So the least you cook it, probably the more beneficial it's going to be to you in general.
Correct. That's correct.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the benefits of not overcooking something for the nutritional benefits, but also the scope of all foods, why we don't want to overcook them, because they all have some kind of association with increasing the chances of one of our cells going rogue.
Yeah, exactly. So same thing with fruits and vegetables. So if you overcook them, the same thing happens. So some of it is you may lose some of those nutrients are going to evaporate out, be dripping out, lost in the water. Although boiling, actually keeps the temperature from going too high. So if you I'll pick on eggs. Okay, in this case, so for example, a soft-boiled egg is better than a hard-boiled egg. So it's because the soft-boiled's not cooked as much.
Yeah.
And then a fried egg is even worse. And then a scrambled egg is maybe even worse. And so now there's not studies showing specifically that I've seen that scrambled eggs, cause cancer. But there is some question about, there's some studies suggesting that high amounts of eggs might increase the risk of cancers. But the problem is probably the cooking issue. How do people fix it? Scrambled. What else they eat with it? Bacon and sausage, and at least in Northern America, we're bad about that.
That is the biggest problem with some studies. And
yes, right.
We as a society will read an article in the newspaper, an article in a magazine, listen to a podcast, and they're like, more than 2 eggs a day or more than 2 eggs a week could cause cancer. Is it really the nutritious egg that's causing the cancer, or most people that are eating that egg that are part of these studies are eating that egg with bacon and hash browns and all this other shit, right? So it's so hard to understand that, because I'm a strong believer that we want to eat everything in moderation, but you do want to get as much natural. So you want your vegetables, you want your fruits, you want your animal products, everything in moderation. So for people to put a target on and say, don't eat a certain amount of eggs or don't eat a certain amount of red meat, I'm questioning it, especially the red meat lately. I'm questioning, like, is it really bad for you? Because if I don't have, like, I was going to the point where I'm having red meat sometimes even once a month. And then I do my blood work and my hemoglobins are so low. And then I'll have a steak and I'll redo my test a week later. My hemoglobins are increasing. So it's like the iron, the benefits of red meat are so important to us. And it's maybe not the red meat, maybe it's the way it's cooked. Why are we doing this podcast? And also what you're eating with it on the side.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like that. So my mind, the worst meal for a person that has cancer, fried hamburger, French fries, and soda pop.
100%.
And so that hamburger is fried, flash fried.
Yes.
Some of the discount chains, they cook it with a infrared cooker. I mean, so it's like instant zapping. It goes through the plant.
Yeah.
200 miles away from the restaurant you got it at, but they flash cook it because they're manufacturing thousands of these at a time, and so those are bad because those are burnt. The French fries are burnt.
The French fries are burnt.
Bad oils.
I was about to say that. The bread's full of sugar.
Yeah.
The mayonnaise, the condiments are full of sugar. 100%. Such a bad.
It's like the worst option. So yes, I do eat some red meat. I don't eat as much as I used to.
What do you eat a week?
And so typically I'll have beef a couple of times a week.
So you do,
and I do eat a couple.
So now I'm jealous. So now I'm going to start increasing that.
I do, but temperature is important. We had a T-bone the other night. Actually, that was last night. We had a T-bone last night, and part of a T-bone actually it was a big T-bone, and so. I'm careful. I eat about a palm worth. That's enough for one meal. And so I typically, I'll eat one animal protein a day. I'll eat one serving of beans a day.
Yeah.
And then I'll use nuts and seeds to round out my third serving of protein a day, to help make sure that I'm getting enough. So once again, it's more of a variety thing. Yeah. I do eat eggs, maybe about 3 a week, so, and they might even be fried. I'm trying to do other options on that.
Yeah. If I want a treat for myself, I'll actually, and it sounds crazy as a treat, but I'll actually have 2 sunny side up eggs with sourdough bread. And I love dipping my bread in it. So it's kind of like a treat for myself, but it's sourdough bread, it's eggs, it's not bad. But it's kind of, that's like almost a treat for myself, which is crazy when you think about that.
Yeah, but I think I don't think we have to be perfect, but I think moderation's the rule. Yeah. And so eating, 6 eggs a day, those eggs actually, and milk, liquid milk, and eggs both have growth factors in those for the baby to grow.
Yes.
And so they do raise insulin growth factors, IGF-1, and that is a risk factor for cancer.
Yes.
So, so there's this, there's this balance, and part of it is a cooking issue too.
Yeah.
So it's, and most of those studies though, most studies, they're trying to separate, some of them will say people eat red and processed meat. Okay. Yeah. So now we don't know for sure, but some studies, they do try to separate that out. And so you have to, if you read that, I was
trying to find those, but all the studies I found it was just a cluster of meat in general. So they're doing a study on 1,000 people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they'll do a study where they'll say, well, what did you eat, the past 5 years while you're in while you're in the beds after cancer surgery, they're going to ask you this questionnaire to fill out this survey. And then they take that information and it's not perfect, but still it's, we have to evaluate that. Yeah. And so once again, I used to have chickens. I don't do that anymore. And so because I would be tempted to eat eggs all the time, they have a lot of great nutrients, but maybe too many growth factors. So I did that for 10 years. We had chickens for 10 years. And so I ate a lot of eggs. So, so I don't do that as much.
Yeah. Let's talk about different cooking methods. So, at my household, we use a lot. We were a big barbecue family. In the summer, we would get home, and this is obviously prior to me being diagnosed with cancer. We would get home, and whoever's home first would turn on the Barbie. And it was we would eat healthy, but whether we'd cut up vegetables and put them in a stir fry on the Barbie, which is blocking them, or we would do our meat, or we would do burgers, or now that I think about it, every Friday it was just like a treat. We would have jumbo hot dogs. And we get home and slap these jumbo hot dogs on the Barbie. These like ballpark hot dogs were like a foot long, and we slap them on, and that would be our dinner. That would be literally all of us would have like 2 hot dogs in a bun, like a treat. And I would eat healthy, I would say 80% of the time, but those were treats we would do to ourselves. Mm-hmm. But we were in the summer, we were on the Barbie all the time. Now it was funny because my wife was saying this the other day. She was like, we've used the barbecue maybe 2 times all summer. We don't even use the barbecue anymore. So now 80% of the food we do is either in the oven or on a stainless steel on the fryer, and we put some, and we do put usually butter or avocado oil, and it's, but I'm saying I would say 70% of the meals are in the oven, and they're never cooked at more than 320, 330, always under in that range. It's not even at a high temperature, keep it a little longer, and that's what we use to cook. So what are your recommendations for cooking?
Yeah, so that upper limit of 350, upper limit. So really, some studies show 300. Yeah. But above, so between 300, 350, that's what I'm trying to keep my grill at. It's got a thermometer on it. So I try to keep it at that. Same thing with the oven. Some of the newer air fryers will allow you to go lower temperatures. Those could be used, but once again, it's temperature and time. So you can still burn a food at 350 degrees. So it's a time factor. And you can modify your recipes, real easy for that. There you can, do a Google search or whatever and say, this recipe, it says 425 degrees for 30 minutes. How long do I have to cook it, for, at 350? Yeah. And so you can figure that out. But once again, you got to keep an eye on it. You got to learn that and not burn it. So yes, pan fry, like a stir fry, I think is a great option. Just don't overdo it. It's got to be, a little bit lower temperature and not as long, but pan frying can be okay. Stir fries, for example, if you want to call it that, can be okay. But breaded and fried chicken, not. It's just that's too hot and too high of a temperature. So yes, I like more like controlling that temperature. Pan cooking is more difficult. So another electric skillet type of a thing, or a grill that has a temperature gauge on it would be another option.
So instead of obviously frying, you have to bring it to a certain temperature to get that oil boiling. So, and we're not we don't fry at all. I mean, anything frying, it will be through the air fryer. And even our air fryer, I mean, we put parchment paper. We try to protect it as much as possible. Are you a believer in air fryers? Do you use air fryers yourself?
We have one, but we've only used it 2 or 3 times. Okay. And so, we don't use it much. And we're a little older and just not used to that type of a thought. And but we've kind of tried it, but then it's the same thing. You have to be careful, overcooking it. So the idea that we have to eat a crispy, crunchy food that's not good.
But you could control the. I mean, our air fryer. I mean, I don't know if they're all like that, but our air fryer does have a temperature control on it and a timer on it. So you have the best of both worlds. I'm not sure if they're all like that. I know we had a cheaper, smaller one before that. It was just essentially a timer. This one actually has a temperature, and you can see the temperature on it. So we have that aspect of controlling it. It's just air fryers are sold as more of a healthier option, right? Because you're not frying it. I mean, back in the day, I grew up.
And definitely, I mean, that's a whole nother problem. And I don't know if we've talked about that or not, but frying oils, once an oil starts turning dark, same thing. It's now a different chemical. It's oxidized. It's damaged, increasing the risk of cancers. So smoke, when an oil starts smoking, that's too hot.
And you see that a lot if you go to a takeout or a fast food place. I mean, it sounds kind of gross, but they'll reuse that oil. And reuse it. Exactly. And you'll see that oil, like you look over the counter and you'll see them frying those fries, homemade fries or whatever it is, and that oil is brown.
Exactly.
So that is something to watch out and be concerned of. I mean, we have so many topics we talk about. I do want to have one of our episodes on seed oils, because I would say 90% of every fast food joint is only using seed oils, where when I'm talking about seed oil, sunflower oil, and those are toxic just because the way they are manufactured or the way they're overheated
and used. Right.
Yeah. So that'll be another topic altogether. So oven baked, and even if you do use the Barbie, you want to keep it under 350. That's a goal of yours. Open flame. You do not want the flame hitting the meat or whatever is on there.
Correct.
The poultry, whatever is on there.
Exactly. You want to use deflectors, and most grills have those, have a deflector. So you want to be careful. And therefore, when that fat drips and that flame flashes, that's creating the smoke. And so that's another area. But like smoked foods, barbecues, in Texas, Oklahoma, I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah,
going to a
huge,
barbecue restaurant.
huge.
And, I don't do that like I used to. And so, but that smoke, it's infused into the meat. So that smoke flavor, that is the bad chemicals. And so that is what's going to increase your risk of, especially gut cancers, everything from esophageal, stomach, colon, rectal cancer. Smoked meats are horrible. Matter of fact, I have a smoker. I used to do that all the time. And, we keep putting the wood in there and burning that wood and creating the smoke and cooking that meat at a low temperature. Yes. But now we're infusing and putting those burnt chemicals into the meat. So the only thing I use my smoker for, actually, it makes a pretty nice dehydrator because I can set the temperature low.
Yeah.
And it's great for dehydrating vegetables and fruit and things like that.
So when you're looking at, it's a big cultural thing. We started actually the topic on the beginning of this podcast. It's a big cultural thing, and it's a big social media thing, and it's like almost like they have reality shows on Grill Master, and you go to Netflix, there's Grill Master shows, and every little city in Toronto, and I'm sure in the US is even more. In the summer, it's like this weekend is here, this weekend's there. It's rib fests. And these rib fests is just massive smokers, and they're smoking these meats for 12, 15 hours, and they're trying to win competition. And people are lining up to buy this meat and do these tastings.
Right.
It's a huge thing.
Right. It is. But it's wrong, and we're learning. And so, and it takes time, and matter of fact, it's a volatile area. I mean, there are going to be some people, well, matter of fact, actually I was recently slapped by Meta and Facebook because people complained about me talking about stuff like this. And it's a volatile area. People really get upset when you start taking away some of their favorite foods or their business or their livelihood. And so, I had a lot of people complain about me talking about this kind of stuff. But it's a scientific fact. Heat damages food. And so we have to be careful about that, how done it is.
Okay. And it is a very, very touchy subject because, like I said, there's a lot of people's livelihoods when it comes to their businesses and their steakhouses, their grill houses, and all that stuff like that. So smoked, just to clarify, smoking the meat is just as dangerous because of the overall chemicals we're getting through that smoke process.
Yeah.
And that goes back to
correct
what we talked about part of this podcast with like firefighters and inhaling the smoke. And it's one thing you said to me, maybe about 4 or 5 episodes ago, and I don't know why I have it in my head all the time now. If you can smell it, you're inhaling it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you can smell it, or yes, exactly. So if you smell that aroma, now there can be good smells. Yeah. And so, but if it's a smoky smell, that's wrong. Matter of fact, I am trying to figure out where's it at, where I need to be, what I need to do, can I get away from it? So, I go camping all the time and campfires and I still do things. I still have a life, but I'm paying attention to where I'm at, and I'm standing so that smoke will be over here, and I'm not,
inhaling
in it like I used to. Right. Exactly. So, and along that line, so that reminds me too. Gosh, we used to do marshmallows and put the marshmallows and roast those marshmallows. And my wife, bless her. She catches that marshmallow on fire, lets it burn. Yeah. And then which is, I would say 99% of people. Yeah. And then eats it. Well, those sugars, you're burning and you're changing those sugars into cancer causing chemicals. And so that's wrong. And so we can't eat burnt food. And so burnt ends on meat. Same thing.
Yeah. So one last option here. One thing I wanted to ask you is I'm very big on steaming vegetables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So steaming vegetables is a great option. What about boiling vegetables?
Good, except for you have a tendency to lose some of those nutrients in the water. Okay. And although if you're making a soup or stew or something, I think it's great because you're going to eat that basically. Or some people say, well, I use that water to make a soup. That's okay. That's good too. So, but you'll lose some of it. So yes, boiling is fine, but you have a tendency to lose the nutrients. Steaming is my preference. And matter of fact, with my busy lifestyle, I are actually a pressure cooker steamer basket. So we, you put the vegetables in a basket, put a little water in the bottom of the steam of the pressure cooker. Instapot is a newer version of that.
Yeah.
You turn it on, as soon as it pressures up, you take it off the fire or off the stove, and it's ready. I mean, so it's like a very quick way to.
What about slow cookers? My wife loves her slow cooker.
Oh yeah, I love slow cooking. Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay.
So you'll maintain those nutrients once again because the temperature is not typically.
Very low. Very low, and
kind of get up to a boil sometimes, but depends on the cooker. But they can get up to a boil. But even that's once again, it's limiting the temperature up to a certain point, and it's not getting up to that burnt.
And they're usually ceramic as well, which is a greater option to cook.
Oh yeah,
my wife loves those. She'll put something in there, or make a stew, or make something, leave it on, and she'll start at like. When she leaves the house at 7 a.m, just leave it on all day, and we get back home and dinner's ready.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's a great option too.
I love that. Yeah.
Slow cookers.
We do that.
Steaming.
Camping trips and
Mm-hmm. Oven, great option as well, as long as we can keep it under the 350 and control the time.
Correct.
Barbecue, great flavor. You want to be very smart with it. It's something you don't do. We're not going to say don't do it because it's just moderation. Everything in moderation.
Yes.
Everything in moderation.
Exactly.
And now, I'm going to ask you one last question. We have a steak. It's on the Barbie. It blackens outside a bit. By cutting off the blackened part, not eating it, is it better, or the chemicals already inside the meat?
It would be better to cut it. Yeah, exactly. Cut that off. I think it'd be a better option. I mean, some of those chemicals will be infused to a certain extent. Once again, actually also that smoke. So when I'm looking at the barbecue and last night cooking the steak, I was watching that and just kind of watching, make sure there's no flames kind of flashing up between the grill, the top, and the here I can kind of see the flames. No flames and no smoke coming out.
Yeah.
So that means I've got a good temperature going, and it's actually it is more like it's more like an oven, really, is what it is. And yes, there actually is a little bit of those chemicals there's going to be in that. Because it still is getting a little bit brown and a little bit of flavor with that. Oh, and marinating the meat before cooking it, before grilling it.
Is it
very important? Yeah. Oils, spices, and herbs.
I was going to say spices and herbs.
Exactly.
When you talk about oil, what type of oil? Because you talk about you don't want to overcook olive oil. Would you put like an avocado oil on it?
Like, that's my favorite. Right.
So
avocado oil is my favorite,
and you know what?
I'll use that on the grill and we use it on the meats and things like that. Help keep it from sticking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We do that as well. And you could, Costco sells the cans of it's a sprayed avocado oil, 100% organic ones. And
we got that.
Easy. Mm-hmm. They're easy just to spray on your vegetables or anything like that. That's the only thing we use for cooking now at our house. Or that or actual real butter. Like organic, grass-fed butter. So
another one of my favorite things is dehydrating, and so I haven't had the time to really dehydrate meat to make a jerky. Not smoking it, but dehydrating it with some marinade. That would be an option, but vegetables. And so I've got okra and tomatoes coming out of my garden like crazy, and so it's like every day we're slicing up vegetables and dehydrating them.
So when you talk about tomatoes, it becomes kind of like what do you call it? Sun-dried tomato kind of thing? Is that?
Yeah, kind of like a sun-dried. Yeah, it's not crispy and it's kind of soft, but the goal is actually to kind of dehydrate it, not lose the juice and any of the nutrients.
When you dehydrate, then do you preserve them like in olive oil or something, or you just put them in a jar?
We'll just put them into actually a plastic baggie, to be honest, a plastic baggie, and then put it in the freezer.
And then use them for cooking as you need it.
Take a bag out, put it into the slow cooker, crock pot, to make a soup or a stew. And matter of fact, we've already got the spices and herbs and some salt on it. It's just, they're ready to go. Or putting it into a salad or whatever. So it just makes it convenient. It just extends that storage, and infuses those spices into that. So spices and herbs are anti-cancer, and every opportunity, no matter what you're doing, pepper, even major anti-cancer chemicals. So we want to add those things to everything while we're cooking to reduce the cancer browning concerns.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. Anything else you want to add to this? I mean, once again, tons of information. Obviously we go on little ramps here and there and just little sprees, but there's so much information here. So much information.
Yeah, there is,
so
yeah.
Overall, don't burn your food.
Right.
Try not to cook on an open flame. If you do cook on an open flame, there's actually one more thing too, is on our barbecue, I don't even know what you'd call it. It's like one flat, like it's not even stainless steel.
Yeah, we call them like iron grills.
Yes,
a flat iron.
A flat iron. We put it on top,
we call them.
so you're not it'll eliminate the open flame. So those are all great options as well. So we actually use that, and we actually cut out vegetables and put our vegetables right on top of that and let that cook. So that's one other option. But eliminate open flame. Try to keep it under 350, ideally around 325, 330. If it's even at a low temperature, you still don't want to burn it.
Correct.
Better options: steaming, boiling, oven, slow cooker, and even, I guess, you could say an air fryer, because we do use it if it's used properly. There's certain concerns about air fryers too out there, but you want to use it properly. Anything else you want to add to this? Because it is something that people have to be aware of, and I hope people, after listening, or fans after listening to this, will make smarter choices. You're not going to, like everything we talk about every week, Keith, people are not going to make 100% change overnight.
Right.
It's that slow change. You might start off 1 or 2 meals a week making that change, but a slow change over time. You're building these healthy habits that over the long haul will help you prevent, if you do have cancer, prevail, and hopefully stop any forms of cancer, if you are in the process of that, from spreading, because you're actually giving your opportunity for the healthy cells to be as healthy as possible, right?
Yeah, right. For them to stay normal.
Yeah.
So they won't go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this?
I think that's it. So, except for we're going out to eat. Like tonight, we probably will go to a barbecue restaurant. So I don't want so I do eat. We do go to a barbecue restaurant, and so there's a good odds are we might go to one tonight. Yeah. But instead of getting the ribs or the other foods or the burnt ends, the burnt meats, I would probably go with chicken, or turkey. And so it's not smoked, it's not as much, and it's not burnt.
Yeah.
And so, and therefore, it's going to be a lower concern. So all the studies show that look at red meat, increasing the risk, and all the studies show that chicken and poultry and fish decrease the risk of cancers. And so, although there's concerns about you can overcook those too, so we have to be careful about that temperature and the frying and overcooking them. But anyway, so yes, I will eat some meat up to once a day, but I'm going to try to make a little bit better choice when I do go out to eat.
Yeah, perfect. And it's like that. It's always you do every time you're about to cook, you're about to eat, every time you're about to put a supplement in your body, you're in everything you do, you're making your choice at that moment. And just being aware of your choices and making the healthier choice at that moment, the domino effect, every little thing makes a difference over the long haul. So I appreciate this, like always, Keith. Incredible knowledge. Thank you for everything you do. And until next time.
My pleasure. Okay, great.